In the previous videos, we looked at a very simple angling club application. Now I'm going to introduce a more complicated example. The definition file we see here covers quite a wide range of the IT functionality required by a typical trading company. In this video, I'm going to concentrate on the personnel area of the company. In this definition file, we can see that there are two singleton objects, the company and the configuration. The company singleton has collections of employees, customers, products, suppliers, and training courses. We can see here that the company is a subclass of organization, and in there we can see members like name, registration number, as well as collections of contacts and sites. The configuration singleton holds collections of configurative objects. These are essentially the lookup tables used in the application, and being configurative, the contents of these collections are deployed along with the application. The company also has a top organizational unit. If we look at this class, we can see that it has a name, a unit type, for example, department, region, or branch, a collection of posts, the jobs in the department, and a collection of sub-organizational units. This latter provides a hierarchical company structure of arbitrary depth. A post contains a name, an associated supervisor post, the required abilities of employees assigned to it, pay scale, annual leave entitlement, and a collection of assignments. Current assignment and current employee are calculated members, which we will look at later. Each assignment has an associated employee working in the post from a start date to an end date. An employee is a subclass of person, which has all the standard personal details. Employees also have collections of abilities, course attendances, incidents, and assignments. Note that here the assignments are associated. All assignment objects belong to are contained in posts. In the employee training section, here we can see that an ability is a combination of a name, skill, and a proficiency, which can be novice, basic, standard, advanced, or guru. Training courses have a name, a resulting ability, and a collection of prerequisite abilities. An employee's course attendance is for a particular training course between a start and completion date and can be successful or not. You can see that there is a lot more in this definition. Pay, transactions, customers, products, suppliers, purchases, but I'll be concentrating on the classes I've just described. So let's create a package for the company. I'll start the generator add-in. The development environment is already showing, so I'll just create a package and fill in the details. And keep everything standard. And click Create. And you can see now the solution being created. I'll just tidy this up a bit. I'll process the definition file. I'll generate the model classes. I'll generate the operation classes. I'll generate default layouts, but I won't generate the desktop user interface classes, as I want to make some changes to the generated layouts before doing so. We'll also create the tables. Click through the confirmation box, and away it goes. This should take some time, so I'll just pause while it completes. That's done, and we can see in the Solution Explorer all the files and classes which have been generated. If I now compile the solution, we can see that there are some compilation errors. This is because of the calculated members I mentioned earlier. I'll just open the definition file again. If I find the post class, here we have two of these, the current assignment and the current employee members, which are calculated by two method calls. We have to add these methods, so I'll open the post class and paste them in. The current assignment at method gets the assignment of a post which was current at a point in time. To do that, it just iterates through the post's assignment collection, checking if the point in time is between the assignment start date and end date, or just after the start date if the end date is open. Persistate uses min value to represent an open or blank date. I'll just show these two files alongside each other. Note the correspondence between the class members in the definition file and the generated properties for start date and end date in assignment and the assignments collection in post. Note also that there is no explicit database access. You simply use the collections such as assignments as normal C# collections, and Persistate handles any database fetching required. The current employee at method calls the current assignment at method, and if there is one, returns its employee. Again, the employee property will invisibly fetch the object from the database if it had not been already fetched. We can see that employee also has some calculated members based on methods, so let's add them in too. I'll open the employee class and paste them in. We can see that these methods are very similar to those for the post class. The next thing I want to do is to customize the generated default layouts. For example, we will want an assignment grid in both the post form and the employee form. In the post form, we'll want to show the employee, but not the post. And in the employee form, we'll want the post, but not the employee. In the generator, I've already drilled down to the layouts I want and displayed them in tabs on the right here. First, let's look at the assignment grid layout. We'll use this one on the post form, so we don't need the post column, so I'll change its format to blank. Only one assignment grid is generated by default, so we'll need another for the employee form. So I'll create one here. We'll call it the employee assignment grid. It's a grid. Now, if I look at it, in this one, we want to keep the post, but there's no need for the employee. Now I'll look at the post form. Here, the required abilities and assignments collections are by default represented by grid access buttons. You click them and they put up a grid. But I want to see these grids directly on the form, so I'll change their formats to subgrids. The sub-layout for assignments is already correctly set to the assignment grid. I'll also change the supervisor post format to nominative access lookup. This shows the name of the supervisor post and has two attached buttons, one to choose the supervisor post and another to display it. In the employee form, again, I want the abilities and assignments in subgrids. But this time, I want the assignment sub-layout to be the employee assignment grid that we've just created. I also want the postal address member to be shown in a subform rather than from a button. There are other similar changes I want to make to other layouts, but for the sake of brevity, I'll do them off video. I've made all the layout changes I want, so now I'll generate the user interface classes. For the company package, I select process definitions, and this time, just the one checkbox to generate the classes for all the forms and grids defined by the class layouts. Click through the confirmation box and away it goes. This will take a minute, so I'll pause recording till it's done. Generation is complete, and now I can build the solution, which builds without errors. Here are all the generated classes in the Solution Explorer. Let's look at the generated post form. You can see that by default the controls are simply stacked vertically. I can easily rearrange the controls in the designer here by simply dragging them. This will take me a minute or two, so I'll pause the recording till I'm done. I'll also do the other forms we'll be looking at. Here's the rearranged post form, and here is the employee form. All I've done here is move and resize the controls. I haven't changed any properties at all. The forms are already bound appropriately. Now I can build and run the application. If I look at the employee collection, I get a lookup form, since it is defined as a collection of many objects. If I click New, I get the employee form to complete for the new employee. However, as yet, there are no titles. We haven't created any. Let's do that now. I'll just cancel this and put up the titles grid. We will find it under the configuration object. I'll create Mr., Ms. and Doctor. I can also create, say, some unit types. Here I'll create company, division. I'll pause recording now and create some objects for the other configurative classes. Right, that's done. If you're wondering why the company node here has this long number, it's because we haven't given the company a name and it's using the object reference instead. I can give it a name on the company form here. I'll call it Widgets Limited. Now I can create an employee. I click New. So he will be Mr. Ernest Eccles. He's male and he was born yesterday. He has a social security number and he is a pretty good widget stamper. I won't bother with an address for now. I'll just click OK. And there he is. If I go back to the employees, look up and search, up he comes. I'll now start on the company organizational hierarchy. I'll display the top organizational unit here and give it the same name as the company. And set the unit type to company. Under this one, I'll create two sub-organizational units. The first one will be the production department, and the second one will be the sales department. Back in the top unit, I'll create a single post. This will be the managing director, and it will require advanced project management. Well, I'll just pause recording now and complete the organizational hierarchy and the roster of employees. Right, that's done. If we now look at the production department, you can see the three posts that I created, but their supervisor posts are not set. I'll set one now. In the widget stamper post, I click the supervisor post lookup button, and I get a select object box starting at the company object. Drill down to the production department posts and select the foreman. And that's set. If we go back and do the same for the foreman supervisor is the managing director. So there we have it. The senior post grid is still empty. We can easily add one like this. This time we get a simple list because in the definition file, the senior posts come from a single collection, the organizational units posts. I select the foreman, and there we have it. Now we're ready to assign employees to posts. We want to do this with the post's assign employee operation, but this is as yet not implemented. So let's close the app and do that now. We can see in the definition file that the assign employee operation is defined here in an operation group called post. This means that the generated stub method to execute it will be in the class post operations. So let's open that. As generated, the operation produces a not implemented message. I'll just replace that with the code I've already prepared. The first thing this does is to get the user interface object and target post object from the supplied execution object. It also finds the current latest assignment in the post for later. Then it creates a new assignment object, adds it to the post collection, and shows it in the user interface in a modal dialog box with OK and cancel buttons. If the result is not positive, the user did not click OK, then it performs a rollback. This undoes any changes to the persistent objects and collections, including the addition of the assignment to the post collection. Now it sets the end date of the previously saved post's latest assignment to the day before the new assignment start date, if there would be an overlap, given that two employees can't be assigned to the same post at the same time. Lastly, it adds the new assignment to the employee's assignments collection and similarly sets the end date of the previous assignment in this collection if required. You will note that there does not seem to be any validation of the new assignment here. The best place for validating an object is in the object itself, and Persistate model classes have a method to do just that. So I'll just open the assignment class. I'll paste in the validate method I prepared earlier. This virtual method is called by the Persistate infrastructure and returns null if all is OK, or an error string if not. Here, the method checks that the user has selected an employee, entered a start date, and that any entered date is after the start date. Finally, it checks that the selected employee is not missing any of the post's required abilities. This is done in an employee method, so we'll enter that now. So I'll open the employee class and paste it in. In fact, I've just pasted two methods. The first is the one called from the assignment validate method. It iterates through the supplied required abilities collection and calls the hasAbility method to check that this employee has each one. The hasAbility method iterates through this employee's abilities collection looking for one with the required skill and at least the required proficiency. Now I'll run the application and make an assignment. Wait a moment for it to start up. I'll drill down to the widget polisher post and select the assign employee operation. If I click OK straight away, then you can see the result of the validation. If I select an employee and the start date, you can see that this employee doesn't have the required ability. If I select one that does, then the validation passes. However, we can see here that the current employee for the post has not been updated. Remember that this is bound to a calculated member, so we need to find a way to make sure that the post form is updated at the appropriate times. To do this, we can use the events which Persistate exposes. I'll put the necessary code in the post class. Find the post class. I'll paste the code in here. This static initializer sets up the two event subscriptions we want. The first event is raised whenever an instance of the assignment class is modified. The second is raised whenever an assignment instance is disowned from its parent. This happens, for example, when you delete an assignment from a collection. The two methods here handle these events and both do the same thing. That is, they find the post containing the assignment and they raise its own modified event. That will cause any visible form or grid showing the post to refresh its data. Let's try it out. I'll drill down again to the widget polisher post. Now, if I delete the assignment, the current employee is updated. If I make a new one, again, the current employee is updated. If I set an end date, then the current employee correctly disappears. I've shown in this video that Persistate can be used for complex applications, and I hope I've given you a small flavour of the development process using Persistate. Perhaps the most important point to remember about this exercise is that everything I've had to do to make this application has been firmly in the core business domain. The definition file describes the application in an intuitive, self-documenting, business-oriented way. From this, with a few clicks, Persistate creates an application which has a huge amount of functionality already created for you. Where you have to supply your own business logic, Persistate creates convenient method stubs for you. And Persistate makes it easy to code that logic, allowing you to manipulate a graph of persistent objects as easily as if they were a standard object graph in memory. You can find the definition file used here on the Persistate website downloads page, as well as the Visual Studio solution created here with a wee bit more code thrown in too.